Okay, so you've handed us this fascinating stack of sources. Our mission today, a real deep dive into the world of international organizations and treaties.
Yeah, it's a complex world out there.
Absolutely. Global affairs can seem like, a whirlwind of headlines, shifting alliances, cryptic acronyms. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But if you peel back those headlines, you find these powerful, sometimes really surprising organizations and agreements quietly shaping things.
That's right. They're the scaffolding, in a way.
Exactly. So our goal is to cut through some of that noise, figure out what these bodies actually do, why they matter, and maybe uncover some less obvious facts.
Sounds good.
We're looking at military alliances, security watchdogs, arms control regimes, the whole gamut, really, and how they balance, national interests with global cooperation.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is how these diverse entities, you mentioned military blocs, nuclear watchdogs, they aren't just abstract concepts floating around. They actively shape global cooperation, sometimes fuel conflict, and even influence our daily lives in ways we might not immediately realize. Understanding them is, well, pretty fundamental.
Couldn't agree more. So let's kick off with the big players. Global alliances and security blocs. And when you talk collective defense, NATO immediately springs to mind.
The giant, yeah.
A cornerstone for North America and Europe. Now, your sources clearly state its birth was a direct response to the Soviet Union threat after World War II.
Prevent another big European war, provide collective security. That was the idea.
Formed April 4th, 1949, Washington, D.C., North Atlantic Treaty, headquarters now in Brussels.
And what really gives NATO its power isn't just the military hardware. It's that core principle, Article 5.
Yes, Article 5.
An armed attack against one or more members is considered an attack against all. That's a serious commitment.
That's huge.
And what's remarkable, really, is how rarely it's actually been invoked. Only once.
After 9/11, right.
Exactly. After the attacks on the USA in 2001, which just highlights its gravity. Today, it's not just deterrence. Its functions have broadened military cooperation, cybersecurity, even disaster response, and partnerships with non-members. Think India, Japan.
And this is where it gets really interesting for current events, obviously. Your sources note Ukraine is not a NATO member.
Correct.
Yet NATO provides significant support weapons, intelligence, training, loads of it. And Russia, on the other hand, sees NATO expansion as, well, a fundamental threat. That dynamic tells you a lot.
It really does. It's that classic tension.
And speaking of expansion, Sweden just became the newest member March 2024. Brings the total up to 32 countries now.
Right. And connecting this to the bigger picture, you mentioned India. India isn't a member, not looking for membership.
No.
But NATO is engaging more with Indo-Pacific strategy, counterterrorism, cyber concerns. India, though, is sticking to its guns, strategic autonomy, avoiding those military bloc alignment.
Okay, so now let's flip the coin. On a different side of the geopolitical map, we've got the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO.
SCO, yeah.
A different beast altogether.
A permanent intergovernmental body, focuses on regional security, economic cooperation, cultural stuff, often called the Eurasian Political, Economic, and Military Alliance. And your sources point out it's massive. Largest regional org by area and population. Covers something like 40% of the global population.
It's huge. And its origin story is interesting, too. It grew out of the Shanghai Five back in 96.
Right. China and the former USSR states.
Exactly. Building trust along those borders. And the core purpose became tackling common threats. Terrorism, cybercrime, drug trafficking. They call them the three evils.
The three evils, okay.
But beyond security, a key aim is also promoting, multipolarity. Cooperation that isn't Western-led. So focus areas are regional security, joint military exercises like Peace Mission.
I've heard of those. Yeah, economic cooperation to energy, infrastructure, often tying into China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI.
Yeah.
And, of course, multilateral diplomacy. Our ATS is a key body within it, the regional anti-terror structure.
Gotcha. So what does this mean for India? Your notes show India became a full member in 2017, hosted the summit in 2023 even.
That's right.
India's priorities seem to be counterterrorism, connectivity, but interestingly, opposing China's CPEC project.
Yes, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. That's a sticking point due to sovereignty issues for India.
Right, and always emphasizing respect for sovereignty. And just recently, Belarus joined in 2024.
The newest member, yeah. keeps growing.
Okay, so we've looked at these sort of grand alliances. Let's peel back another layer now and look at the specialized watchdogs and regulators. The bodies kind of quietly policing things.
The less visible, perhaps, but crucial ones.
Exactly. First up, Interpol. Everyone knows the name. World's largest international police organization.
But here's the key thing.
Yeah, this detail from your sources is crucial. Interpol does not have law enforcement powers. No arrests.
Right. They coordinate. They don't act directly. They're like a global switchboard for criminal intelligence.
Founded way back in 1923, Vienna. Renamed Interpol in 1956. Now based in Lyon, France.
So you might ask, if they don't arrest, how do they actually fight transnational crime?
Good question.
Well, they facilitate cooperation between national police forces. Their most famous tool is probably the Red Notice.
Ah, the Red Notice. We hear about those.
Yeah, helps locate and provisionally arrest people pending extradition. But they have others too. Blue for information, green for warnings, yellow for missing persons, black for unidentified bodies, purple for modus operandi, orange for threat warnings. It's a whole system.
A whole color-coded system.
Pretty much. And their core areas are, the big ones. Counterterrorism, cybercrime, trafficking drugs, humans, financial crime.
So, for you listening, it's worth knowing India's been a member since 1949. Uses Red Notices frequently think Mehul Choksi or Nirav Modi cases. But your sources also flag a limitation, a big one. Despite Interpol being strictly non-political, non-military, non-racial, non-religious.
Always a but.
There is. Some countries, unfortunately, misuse Red Notices for political reasons. That's a real challenge for them.
Undermines the whole system, potentially, yeah.
Okay, shifting gears now. Let's talk nuclear. The nuclear watchdog of the world. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA.
The IAEA. Vienna-based, again, like Wassenaar later.
Right. Central forum for promoting peaceful use of nuclear energy and, crucially, making sure that tech isn't diverted to weapons.
And its origin, again, post-WWII context.
Yeah.
The atomic bombings.
Your sources link it straight to Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace speech in 1953. Prevent proliferation, promote safe use.
Exactly. Established July 29th, 1957.
So what makes the IAEA so critical?
Well, it's got these dual objectives, really. First, nuclear safeguards, inspecting facilities, making sure materials aren't being secretly used for weapons.
Inspections, yeah.
And second, technical cooperation. Helping member states use nuclear tech safely for good things. Medicine, agriculture, energy. Plus, they set global safety standards.
And its real-world impact.
Oh, it's been huge. Think about monitoring the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, addressing North Korea's activities, reviewing Fukushima, inspecting Ukrainian plants like Zaporizhia during this conflict. They're often right in the thick of major global events.
Very true. Now let's look at India's position. It's quite unique here.
It is. India's a founding member, actually, and a big contributor on the peaceful tech side.
And the sources highlight that after the Indo-U.S. nuclear deal in 2008, India signed a safeguards agreement with the IAEA.
Which was a massive step.
Absolutely. Opening its civilian reactors for inspection, even though India isn't part of the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
That's key. And India actively collaborates with the IAEA to cancer therapy, food preservation, using radiation, using isotopes in agriculture. Lots of practical applications.
Okay, let's move on to arms control. Specifically, a treaty that's incredibly important, but kind of surprisingly not actually fully enforced yet. The CTBT.
The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Yeah, the name says it all.
Prohibits all nuclear explosions anywhere. Military, civilian, underground, underwater, you name it.
The goal being to stop countries improving their nuclear weapons through testing and just strengthen the global norm against using them at all.
Adopted by the UN General Assembly September 10th, 1996. So it's been around a while.
It has. But here's the catch. You said it's not in force. Why?
Right, that's the crucial question. Despite 178 countries ratifying.
Which is a lot.
It is. But your sources clearly state it needs ratification by 44 specific Annex II states. These were countries with nuclear tech back when it was adopted.
And several key ones still haven't ratified.
Exactly. The U.S., China, Israel, Iran, Egypt, and notably India, Pakistan, and North Korea haven't even signed it, let alone ratified.
Which brings us to India's stance.
Yes, your sources are very clear here. India did not sign and continues to oppose the CTBT.
Why? What's the reasoning?
They see it as discriminatory, basically freezing the status quo, locking in the advantage for the countries that already had nuclear weapons.
Favors the existing nuclear powers.
Right. India argues for universal, non-discriminatory, time-bound nuclear disarmament instead, a much bigger goal. And of course, India conducted its Pokhran-2 nuclear tests in 1998 after rejecting the CTBT.
Underscoring their position, yeah. The treaty itself relies on a global verification system, monitoring stations, on-site inspections if needed.
Okay, so if CTBT is about banning tests, how do nations control the actual materials and tech? That brings us to the NSG.
The Nuclear Suppliers Group. And your sources specifically warn, don't confuse it with NDG. It's NSG.
NSG, got it.
Yeah.
So what is it? It's a voluntary group, consensus-based. It controls exports of nuclear materials, equipment, technology.
Right. Export control regime.
And crucially, your sources state its formation was a direct response to India's nuclear test in 1974, Smiling Buddha.
Ah, interesting link there.
Yeah, formed specifically to stop non-NPT countries, like India at the time, from getting sensitive nuclear stuff. Formed 74 in London, hence the nickname London Club. No permanent HQ, rotating chair.
So what's India's relationship with the NSG now? It's complex.
Very complex. India is not a member as of 2024. Applied back in 2016, got support from many, including the U.S., but wow. China has been the main opposition, basically pointing to India not being an NPT signatory.
The NPT hurdle again. So why does India want in?
Well, access to civilian nuclear trade, advanced technology, and, the recognition as a responsible nuclear power. But your sources also highlight that big 2008 NSG waiver India got.
Yes, after the Indo-US deal.
Huge diplomatic win. It allowed India to trade in civilian nuclear material despite being outside the NPT, a unique exception.
Definitely a significant development. Okay, what's next in the export control family?
Let's talk missiles. The MTCR, or Missile Technology Control Regime.
MTCR.
This one's an informal, voluntary partnership aimed at stopping the spread of missiles and drones capable of carrying weapons of mass destruction. WMDs.
Formed back in '87 by the G7 countries.
So why should you, our listener, care about this one?
Well, because India is a member.
Bingo. Joined in June 2016, and your sources say this entry backed by the U.S., Russia, France was a big deal for India.
How so? What were the benefits?
Access to critical missile and drone tech, a boost for ISRO's space program, and it even paved the way for India to sell missiles like the BrahMos to other countries.
Interesting. Access and export potential?
And China.
China's not a member.
Okay.
But they have pledged to follow its rules.
Okay. So that covers nuclear materials and missiles. What else?
One more key regime. The Wassenaar Arrangement, or WA.
Wassenaar.
This one promotes transparency and responsibility in exporting conventional arms and also dual-use goods and technologies, stuff that has both civilian and military applications.
Mm-hmm. Important distinction. It basically replaced COCOM, which was the old Cold War export control body, formed after the Cold War to keep conventional arms and that dual-use tech out of the wrong hands. Established July 96, based in Vienna again.
And India's status here?
India's in this one too. Joined the WA in December 2017.
Okay, so member of MTCR and Wassenaar.
Exactly. And membership here gives India access to sensitive dual-use tech, helps its Make in India defense goals, and just boosts its reputation as a responsible tech holder.
You can see how it fits together, right? It complements the NSG and MTCR efforts, all contributing to, well, regional and international security in different ways.
Absolutely. Okay, wow. That was quite the journey. So what does this all mean for you listening?
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. A deep dive into NATO, ENSTO, Interpol, IAEA, CTBT, NSG, NTCR, and the Wassenaar Arrangement. Uncovered their origins, their purposes, some surprising impacts. It really shows how interconnected and frankly how diverse global governance is, like an invisible framework, kind of balancing cooperation and national interest.
It really makes you think, though. When you consider all these different organizations, some with overlapping goals, right? Some with conflicting memberships, some, like CTBT, still pushing for full implementation. What does that tell us? What does it say about how global power is shifting? About the sheer complexity of international cooperation and the very real challenges of just maintaining peace and stability in a world that's more connected than ever?
Yeah.
How do these acronyms that seem so distant actually influence global security, trade ties, even the tech we might use every day?
That is definitely a lot to mull over. We hope this deep dive has given you a bit of a shortcut to feeling well-informed on these really crucial international players.
Hopefully demystified some of it.
Exactly. Until next time, keep that curiosity well-fed.